I mean, the difficulty, I guess, in those scenarios is that there is a mixture of people who would be able to and aren't able to, and that's the same for every single building in downtown. So either you end up with units that are just not done up at all, within a sort of or you have a strong enough sense of community that the people who are more able to pay are happy to put in a bit more into the common pot for the benefit of the building in themselves, I guess.
Do you think that's possible?
Sorry?
Do you think that's a possible model in Yangon?
I don't know.
So I'm hearing different reasons why that would be potentially problematic, and a lot of it comes down to land tenure. No one knows if it's actually their bill.
Feel strong enough about their own position.
Right.
And that is the fundamental issue. And that affects people's willingness to sell, because, as you say, no one has the clear title. So when you're exchanging apartments for a few $1,000, it probably doesn't matter that much. But when you're sort of trying to get hundreds of thousands of dollars or something, no one's going to hand over $100,000 without a little bit more than a handshake and the word of mouth.
I've seen people do it. I don't know how, and I think as things become more clear, that willingness to do the handshake is going to become
But so how have you found from your stuff that, I mean, when you were dealing in real estate, did you only have properties that had a clearer tenure, or?
I mean, I was mostly dealing, and still deal mostly in international rental properties, so those that are renting have the paperwork, but even there, it's never really clear. You have, when someone, especially from the international organizations that are coming in, that want to see clear title, I can't show that for a rental property because often that person bought it from someone else who bought it from someone else, and the ownership paperwork is actually 5 transactions backwards, and everyone knows that it's this person's property, but there's no documentation to really prove it. That's why one of the biggest problems is when international restaurants, a restaurant comes in and they want to get a new power transformer, like a 3-phase power transformer. It's usually done up in the name of the owner, but tenants don't know that. They think they're paying the bill and they're asking for it, but the actual document that says that the electricity bill is coming to X person is so valuable because it's one of the few signs that someone actually has possession.
Want to give that over.
Like when a Mexican restaurant got a 3-phase, we had the owner calling thinking that they were trying to steal the property from him.
Really?
Like, no, they just want to operate their espresso machine, but it's a genuine understanding between different groups that need to be understood. But I still see people that don't look at paperwork and just transfer the property. It might be more difficult now. What are some of the longer-term plans for Turquoise Mountain in Myanmar or Yangon?
I mean, on the building side of things, we want to do the bigger building projects, and have been sort of focusing in on the Taurus Burma building because off the back of the Merchant Street property, that was the building that the regional government asked us to look at. Basically, having pitched the model that I described to you, which is kind of.
So you pitched to regional government that you wanted to do something, and they said, in that case, look at this building.
Well, we actually pitched it loosely based around different buildings. So
you were looking at Balthazar.
The Balthazar and the District Court.
Right.
And
this is before Kempinski was involved in that, or
what was the General Accounts Office at the other end, so on the corner of Bank Street and Pakistan.
Sure.
So because he opened the exhibition at the Merchant Street project because they'd just come in Japan, and so the timing was good on that side, and then we pitched the project. He said he liked it, but could we look at the Taurus Burma building? So we started looking at the Taurus Burma building. We kind of worked up quite a lot of detail in relation to that, and then the regional government sort of said, I think there was a slight realisation that it's probably one of the few buildings that they actually controlled, because it was at that point it had already been transferred from the Ministry of Construction to the regional government.
The tourist building?
Yeah.
Okay. So the Ministry of Construction had it.
Yeah, so it was under the Ministry of Construction.
Was it nationalised?
They say so, yes.
Okay. There's a claim, right?
There's a claim, yeah. We've, again, never seen the legal paperwork. When we talk to the regional government about it, they're very definite that it's gone to the Attorney General's office and it's not a valid claim.
Okay.
But we just have their work to take on that. So yeah, it's been transferred from the Ministry of Construction to the regional government. So actually, it's one of the few buildings that the regional government actually controls. There aren't that many. Those historic buildings, they tend to be under a union level ministry, the Ministry of Finance, or
Right.
So they are actually now looking to retain the building. They still want us to be involved in the regeneration. They still want the ground floor and the roof to be public access and the area around it. But they, the original model that we proposed isn't even the model that's going to be used.
Okay.
So they would provide some of the funding for it, basically, because it would be, a lot of it would retain this government.
So previously you had said that you would basically take control for...
So the model we proposed before is that we would set up effectively a foreign investment company registered under MIC, could take, and that would have a local set of, have a set of trustees effectively, and we try and secure it through its articles of association, effectively like a trust structure, but using the company as the legal vehicle. And we kind of got in principle agreement to all of that and started the process. But I think partly I think there was a realisation from the regional government that they didn't actually have that control over that many historic buildings. And also, I mean, maybe it was too big a step for them to take initially in terms of, there's a general paranoia about handing things off, even if they're sort of more liabilities and assets and they haven't actually done anything. Anyway, so that's kind of where we're at now. And yeah, we're sort of in that, hopefully getting that going. But the alternate thing, actually, maybe I should speak to you about it. So on the craft side of things, so we've got the jewellery workshop, which is a few floors down. We're doing quite a lot of jewellery, about to expand, and that's, we set up a local company effectively, which effectively operates as a social enterprise, and all the profits get back in.
I think my flatmate was working on that with you all, Jack.
Oh yeah. Okay, right. I didn't realise you were. Yeah. So Jack is helping us out on the gold project side of things. I didn't realise Jack. Okay, that makes sense. Because he's coming back in September.
Yeah.
So he'll be staying with you then.
He stays when he's in Yangon. He stays at our place. When he's in the UK, I usually stay at his place.
Okay. So that gold project is feeding into the jewelry project. And actually, we're renting the ground floor here, we've got a workshop there, and potentially we'll start a textiles workshop. So the idea in this previous model with this big government building is that we try and put all that together.
Okay.
Now, if we do this different model, then we would probably be in a situation where we'd have to rent another space for the textiles, and actually it would make sense to try and consolidate everything.
Or negotiate with the regional government to rent a space back from that.
Yeah, that's going to be tricky in this currently. But one thing we're looking at is actually trying to get a 5-year lease on the building, and then do something ourselves and try and sort of perhaps bring in a second, maybe an F&B tenant, a retail tenant, a related retail tenant, something like Clad A or something like that.
Right.
Put it all into one building basically. And actually we were looking at, there's an old cinema on North of Amsterdam Street.
Yeah.
Which apparently is on the. We went to look at it with an estate agent.
The current, like the Wizia cinema.
No. On the North of Amsterdam, so you wouldn't even know it's a cinema. Actually, it's kind of one of those ones that's been completely corded over at the front.
Okay.
And so we were having a quick look at that out of interest, just in case we sort of get to the point with the government where we feel we're not really. We could probably do a project in the interim by the time we have to get permission. But that would be obviously much less security of tenure, so it would be a 5-year lease, but again, what's that 5-year lease? What's the security in that 5-year lease? So there would be obviously quite a lot of risk in terms of money invested, blah, blah, blah. But
is there a fixed figure for all of these projects that you are able to risk up to?
No, it does not. No, it's taken on a case-by-case basis. I mean, my feeling on this other project would be, you probably have to spend, I don't know, between 300,000 and 500,000. As it's quite a big building, there's quite a lot to do to it. We'd be spending probably a monthly rental of, I think, $7,000.
Yeah.
And you would be getting, in terms of the value of the space, you would probably be getting sort of, probably double that in terms of its worth of space, maybe more. So,
right. If you were to go all 5, then you would be okay. But
yeah,
then,
you could probably just about make it.
Yeah.
But it's quite a lot of risk in it.
Right. If you go 4, then you're...
Yeah. So yeah, that's another one. But that said, we're a charity, and actually doing up a building like that, it's doing up a building, and we'll probably get quite a lot out of it, even if it's at least we got screwed after 3 years, and we could probably argue that it was worth doing. Yes.
Have you felt that the relationship that you have with the regional government or YCDC has grown since you've been operating in the country? Is it getting stronger?
Yeah, well, I guess the Merchant Street project was all done under the previous government, so I guess it all changed, and so the timing of it was good in that sense. So we started off on a very good footing with the new government, effectively, because we sort of had this tangible project that we just launched. They obviously at that stage are clinging to things that they can sort of just run with. So, so I think we started on a good footing, and we've continued. I guess we've become increasingly frustrated, I guess, at the time things take, but not that surprised.
What are the biggest challenges in trying to operate in this market?
I think government capacity. Everyone says it. I mean, it's government capacity in that you get high level agreement, but then actually just implementing things is tough, and it's tough for them. And you understand why it's tough for them because they haven't really got anyone working for them. And they don't really trust anyone they work with and all that. So I guess that and then the legal side of things obviously is quite a big challenge.
Yeah. Would you continue, now that you're potentially going to be working in the ostensibly public building or the private buildings, there are basically 2 different proposals going, that there are a handful of large landmark public government-owned buildings which need to be restored, and potentially 2,000 to 3,000 privately owned buildings that also need to be restored, and all of this could be absorbed into a conservation zone.
Yeah.
From your perspective now, potentially working in both, would you ever go back to the privately owned buildings?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think we'd be interested in, I'm always interested in doing different models. I mean, I think I've always been very interested in kind of low-cost housing within historic buildings as well.
Yeah.
And that would be a sort of a model. I think there's some quite interesting kind of low-cost housing historic buildings around anyway. And also adapting some of the bigger buildings that sort of people don't know what to do with and things like that. I think it's always interesting. So I mean, I guess there's lots of different models that I think are quite interesting.
Yeah. Are you familiar with successful models for private area restoration that doesn't allow for higher buildings or effective increased density that still are able to keep the local population in the building?
That's a lot of different factors. I guess the closer things that we did some housing projects in like Stoke-on-Trent and like in the Midlands in the UK, which is basically, these were sort of old Victorian terraces that were being sold for £1. Lots of, after the Pathfinder scheme, which was a big scheme where they demolished a lot of housing to create new, better quality housing, but actually what they created was worse, and the money ran out halfway through, so they demolished all this housing, and then you were just left with this blighted. So I've done projects there, which actually has brought back people into their original housing, low-cost housing, and that was incredibly successful in terms of the rebuilding of the communities, low-rise, still quite, relatively high density because it's old Victorian terrace streets, so they're quite narrow blocks, they're back-to-backs, and they're quite tight streets. So, I think definitely I would see that as a successful example. But that relies on the existing low value of the assets or the land, which is the issue in the advantage of it skewed. In some ways it has positive effects because technically some of these schemes stack up in that you have a building, you need to invest X in it, but you can get this return because the rentals are quite high and the landlord is quite high. So in that sense, it stacks up. whereas in Stoke-on-Trent it didn't necessarily.
Right.
Very long kind of subsidised loans and things like that. But obviously the disadvantage of that is you have a natural push towards gentrification because the way that it stacks up and the way that the market is forcing you is to obviously get higher rentals.
Exactly, yeah.
So I think the truth is you can't have it all.
Where's your priority, or what's the organizational priority to say, if you had to save one, if you can't have it all, there's going to either be the effective loss of intangible heritage through gentrification and...
I think the truth is that if you just look at what's happening, the truth is that the gentrification is happening anyway.
Right.
Whether it keeps its heritage or not. And I think it's probably, in the loss of the heritage, it's less likely to, or the gentrification will happen faster.
Right.
Whereas, I think our focus really is on bringing buildings back to life and trying to secure. We're not going to be doing any sort of like full commercial property development just for sake of the building. So there's always going to be an element of trying to increase public access or create community uses and all those kind of things within it. So hopefully by what we're doing, it's at least encouraging things in a certain direction. But I don't think, I'm personally not, I think you can be blind to the fact that there is a sort of something going on. But also, downtown Yangon has historically been quite an affluent area. It's not the poorest people do not live in downtown Yangon. They're coming over from Dallas. There are quite a lot of middle class families living in downtown Yangon, and quite often living in buildings that you're just like, it's an amazing building, right? And you've probably got quite a lot of money. So why don't you actually invest in all those reasons that we talk about?
Right.
They're not. It's quite an unusual place, I think.
Does the association of them living in a beautiful building, or the potential for them to live in a building, is it something that's easily taken up by the tenant? Or are you noticing that this conversation of architectural quality or heritage buildings is something that's easily understood by the tenants, or is there a gap in the understanding?
Yeah, no, I think there's definitely a gap. I think one thing we were conscious of with the Merchant Street project is just trying to give people an example of what an old building looks like when it has been cared for and done up, because up until that point there aren't that many examples of, as in like old equals dysfunctional and broken down, whereas new equals functional, even though new, poorly built 5 years down the line equals even more dysfunctional. So I guess that was one of the reasons to try and show people an example that actually these buildings are not only fit for purpose, but arguably an on-site better than a lot of the stuff that's going up in terms of generous floor-to-ceiling heights. Things that I don't think people, certainly in the Merchant Street project, necessarily thought, I really love that cornice detail, or I love that kind of decorative feature. But they do I can see that the high ceilings is great in terms of much cooler space. Those side of things, and this is much when it rains, I don't get loads of noise because I've got a sort of Mangalore tile roof rather than a tin roof and all that. So those kind of, it's all part of the same stuff, but it's more the kind of the practicality of the building. They did
the functional quality of the building is noticeably better if it's actually restored to a certain quality.
And I think people, and the tactility, I think people enjoy their sort of wooden stairs, their wooden, even in new buildings people tend to want to put wood around quite a lot, and so I think those kind of things people do enjoy and appreciate. And people, people would spend a lot of time putting plants outside their properties and things like that, as they do quite often all around downtown. So people do enjoy creating a nice space.
At this point, do you think that, given the choice of a new build construction project or a renovated heritage or colonial era building, if given that choice at this point in time, where do you think the current decision would be directed in? Where would they?
I think if you're comparing high quality new build, then they would always go for a new build. As in, if you were sort of saying, here's an aspirational block that's going, I'm trying to think of an example. Every example I think of, they're not very good quality, but say the extension at the back of the Sedona Hotel.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
something that's kind of aspirational Bangkok style.
Right. Yeah.
I think that would be a no-brainer, and I think everyone would probably go for that. I think if you were comparing a poor sort of, I don't know, tame wing construction, like 10-story, they probably would think twice these days, because they realise that the lift is going to break after a couple of years, the floor to ceiling heights are so stingy that, yeah.
Is that a matter of just encouraging those Sedona-style buildings into the city and creating regulations for?
I think that's certainly part of it, and I'm definitely not opposed to the high-quality new building.
Yeah.
But that said, in terms of the conservation zone, given that there's so many potential development sites in Yangon, given that you do have the potential to limit that kind of development in this area, why wouldn't you really? Just that even if you weren't sure, but you just wanted to hedge your bets, I slightly feel like, especially because actually, for whatever reason, because of the traffic and all that, actually the high quality property developers don't want to take on the downtown.
Right.
Really, I mean, okay, Junction City is an example where they have, and obviously the landmark size funds kind of development. Yeah, but they're sort of.
There were other driving interests that got them to that land as well.
Yeah.
Search Fund had somewhat access to that, and Junction City, Shuidown, was a big vacant plot.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it might be harder.
Yeah, exactly. But actually, I think you would probably speak to most of the developers, and they'd much rather have something in the suburbs where they can have lots of parking and just not the traffic.
Yeah.
Well, whether that's a good urban strategy or not is a different debate.
Yeah. Issues of sprawl. But, okay. So if you had any suggestions from your perspective to YCDC or the regional government on how to best control the changes that are happening in the city, the demolition or the new construction, what suggestions would you have for the long-term plan? There is no Yangon 2040 plan. These are all up in the air. So what are the priorities from your perspective that need to be taken into account?
For the conservation area, or just generally?
Say downtown CBD.
Yeah. I mean, for me, it's controlling it's controlling the demolition and controlling what's built in its place. And
right.
I'll go along with the height thing. I think probably it's right for that particular area. In having certain zone areas where there are kind of limitations on. I mean, I'd say more scale is probably more important than height. Scale and appropriateness, and just, I mean, for me, it's the quality of what's going back. Is kind of one of the most important things. But that's, I mean, it's so linked to so many different things. I mean, it's linked to I mean, at the moment, basically, you're basically looking at imports. Well, there's too many basically design build contractors where the design is inverted commas, and actually just sort of cultivating and celebrating design and the design kind of community and local talent in terms of just like thinking about how things are designed. I think is so important.
Have there been any steps forward? They have YCDC issued height regulations, but do you see any forward progress at the regional level or at the city level of how to actually build? What kind of
I think there's quite a lot going on behind the scenes, certainly just through people I speak to around. And there's an M&E contractor I know quite well who's very involved in kind of trying to lobbying on like fire regs and quality of installation and different regulations in terms of electrics. And so I mean, I think there clearly are things going on. There's obviously been quite a lot of hoo-ha recently about the YCDC, the people who sign off on YCDC and how they're actually quite often less qualified than some of the people from the engineering. I mean, all this kind of infighting around who actually is, and you have these professional engineers who have to sign off on things, but that tends to be quite a lot of those have questionable engineering thing, and they are just designated fees, and they just go around and they get paid for their signatures.
Yeah, often they're not even going around. They just they never check the property.
And they just get they get paid to sign.
Yeah.
So there's some broken things in the system.
Right.
So yeah, for me that would be my
Okay.
kind of make sure that you don't. Well, I mean, my whole unit for any of this is really if you're going to demolish it, you've got to make sure what you put back is better than what's been demolished. Otherwise, just don't demolish it.
Right. Right.
And I mean, even there's examples in the U. I mean, like, if you look at the Crossrail system in London, they had to demolish a number of listed properties, but they had to. Remember the huge and rigorous process that went around justifying why that was necessary, how they could be minimised, and what was the quality of the stuff going back and all that kind of thing. So it's just it's that kind of. But the basic fundamental justification is that what goes back needs to be better than what was there, and there's a reason. If you are demolishing something, there's a reason to do it.
All right. If there are any other people that you think, if I'm trying to better understand this very complex situation, are there any other people that you would suggest I speak to? Do you know offhand?
I mean, have you been speaking to anyone at YCDC?
Yeah. Urban. I have that relatively well-established relationship with Urban Planning Division. I'd like to speak to Buildings Department, and they're going to introduce me. But
okay. And you've been speaking to YHT, Doane, all those guys?
Doane's at the end of this month.
Okay.
They're the last ones.
Yeah, I mean, they're quite interesting to speak to in terms of their models for... I mean, they're obviously relatively new, but their models in terms of how they're trying to sort of, on a more kind of small scale, but trying on a bigger... Well, smaller projects on a bigger scale.
Exactly, yeah. It seems like that's one of the bigger sticking points. You have many sticking points with land ownership, and even if that were clear, or unit ownership with the 15 different family members that have a claim, even if that were clear, how do you finance it? And if it's not these larger buildings that in theory have clear government ownership that are vacant, how can you protect or preserve a building that has 12 different interests and no money to pay for the renovation? And that's kind of what I'm driving at. I'm personally interested in the larger buildings, and I think those are good examples to discuss in the paper, but I think that the larger problems are going to be in the private buildings. And it seems that when we're having those discussions with many residents, the concept of heritage is clear in the larger buildings, but when it comes down to personal property, it's my property, so why would anyone else be able to tell me what I can and can't do with it? When
that exists more stronger here than I've seen it. I mean, maybe America's different because America sort of has. In the UK, you're very much drilled into you. That you're sort of, if you own a historic building, you're sort of the guardian of it. You're the custodian of it. And I guess. But here, I was amazed actually at how strong that kind of sentiment is. So I know the Merchant Street is just like, okay, but it's my property, so I can do what I like. But then as soon as it gets over a certain sort of nominal distance, so it's YCDC, so we have to sort of speak to YCDC on that. It's kind of, there doesn't seem to be any middle ground. Either it's like, it's the authority or it's mine. There's no...
Within these walls, on the outside, it's mine, and you can't tell me what to do with it. And also the recognition of heritage, if it's not framed as an appreciation of the architecture, but very much as a personal connection to a place. And that's, I think with the Living Restoration Project, that was, at least those residents have made it very clear that they don't particularly care about the fact that the building was built during the colonial period, but they grew up in this place. They know their neighbors. They know everyone around them, and they have memories, some very negative memories of the property, but they're still their memories. And how can that be captured in this dialogue, and how can that be expressed to a person in a way to not only keep their heritage alive, but also keep the built heritage in place? Is it possible to do that? And that's where I'm going. So I'd like to speak to as many people as I can. If you do have any other recommendations,
Yeah.
think about it. I mean, if anyone just pops to mind, let me know.
Yeah.
But
And if you spoken to any of the larger property developers?
yeah. Some of the large property developers I've spoken to that actually don't have much of a connection to
Yeah.
the buildings because they all have government contracts. It's
Yeah.
been the smaller scale property developers that have had more interesting
Yeah.
sentiment, which is basically I'm giving them a place for free. There's no other way for this to be done. I'm going to continue to build downtown, and people are still going to come to me because my option is a free unit at that in the exact space that it was supposed to be before.
Yeah.
Why would anyone say no?
Yeah.
That's fine. Also, some of the bigger property developers, middle scale property developers, also own a lot of land that are
Yeah.
the same families, so there's that overlap. Yeah. Do you have any other questions for me about what I'm about to?
No, I mean, other than, I guess when you're done, is it something you're going to share, or is it?
I mean, so the project itself goes into that Oxford vault that
Right, yeah.
technically is publicly accessible, and no one ever reads it. It depends on what comes out of it. I'm happy to share a copy with you and everyone else.
Really interested to see.
I think that a lot of this has been discussed in different contexts, and
Yeah.
just trying to show the further complications of what happens in Myanmar is my greater contribution. But it's not going to be any suggestions. It's just going to, I think, highlight some of the complications.
And when are you writing it up? When's
The due date is end of September, so
okay,
I'm writing it now. I have the format and the draft. I'm filling in what I can, methodology, and some of the literature review, and then everything else is kind of going in as I'm able to look at it all together. So
And you'll continue on in Yangon for the foreseeable future?
the other work opportunities I have in Myanmar are all based in Yangon. I'm interested still staying in Yangon. This is a place that, I mean, it's gotten me to where I am, and I feel very grateful to the city and the people in the city for helping me get here. So I want to be able to take the degree that I earned and best use it in the city temporarily. I'm also conflicted because Donald Trump's the president of the United States right now. I, in theory, should be going back and fighting, but my best contribution is in Yangon at this point. So I've been here 8 years now, so it's kind of what I know. Just don't want to get typecast into the Yangon pocket. Other research has come up, and it's still based in Yangon, but it's not in my direct area of expertise, and it's given me a lot of opportunities to learn. Looking at the peri-urban areas in Yangon, Mandaya and North Dagon, I've spent the past few months working there, and it's been fascinating to get out of what I know. So it's good.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, good to catch up.
Yeah.
And